I would like to welcome you to the company on behalf of the management team. My name is George Parrish. I am the Director of Governance and Compliance for the business. Today I'm going to give you a brief presentation on what we mean by corporate social responsibility. A definition of corporate social responsibility means lots of different things to different people. But this is about us as a business making a decision to focus ourselves on good environmental practice, to work with the local communities and have beneficial partnerships and relationships with them to encourage such things as volunteer work. We're a people business. We want our employees involved in these activities. We have strong ethical standards when we're dealing with our employees, our customers, our suppliers or other stakeholders. I would like you to watch this very brief video which outlines the issues which you've all heard about on the television and the radio, which relates to global warming.
In our series, the 2020s, can you believe that? We're exploring the big topics that will dominate the conversation in the next decade. Well, today our focus is on climate change. Over the last 10 years, sea levels have risen at an alarming rate. Biodiversity is reportedly declining faster than that of any time in human history. And millions of people have been affected by extreme weather like hurricanes and floods.
We've talked before on the Saturday show about this, but the Arctic and the Amazon seem to be the two areas with the biggest change that we're seeing ahead.
So these are tipping points. We need to watch them closely. The Amazon, it's being slashed and burned very quickly. Climate change is drying it out. And if we're not careful, it could turn into a savanna. So from a rainforest with all that life into a savanna, right now, it's acting as a carbon sink. It's pulling tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. It is helping us slow down the consequences of climate change. Pretty soon, it may not be able to do that. Same thing with the Arctic and permafrost. Permafrost is frozen ground in the Arctic tundra. That now, this year, has changed from being a net absorber of carbon dioxide to being a net emitter, which means that it causes climate change to spiral and go even faster. And we have to watch out for destabilization of ice shelves in the Arctic and Antarctic. That's something we hope doesn't happen, but if it does, sea level creeps up even faster.
All right, Jeff Berardelli, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, what are we going to do to play our part? Firstly, we put some environmental targets together a number of years ago, and we used the acronym ABC. A stands for automobiles and aircraft. This relates to CO2 reduction. We set ourselves a goal to reduce our CO2 emissions by 10% over a 5-year period. And last year, we started to measure our CO2 emissions from our flights. B stands for buildings. This is about the reduction of CO2 from the utilities we use. That could be electricity, gas, oil. C related to the chemicals we use. Our goal is to reduce them both in number and in hazard rating. Not only does this achieve an environmental objective, but what it also does for us is to make your working environment safer. And we added last year P for plastics, which is basically reducing or replacing single-use plastics in our buildings, and then to work with our suppliers to also replace single-use plastics by 2022. We decided in 2019 to take a more radical approach to this. We produce 287 tons of CO2 from our vehicles per year. Although we had done a lot of work getting more energy efficient vehicles, reducing the journeys that our staff take by having a better organised geographical area, this had an impact, but not the impact we wanted. So we decided to do something entirely different, and we called this offsetting. We've based a lot of our environmental programme on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. You can see the 17 goals on the screen. So what does offsetting mean? Offsetting is quite simple. We produce 287 tons of CO2. What we then do is to pay for projects across the globe that will reduce the amount of CO2 produced in those areas by the equivalent amount in our business. What it does do is stop another 287 tons of CO2 going into the atmosphere. The projects we've been involved in are Kenya tree planting and protecting the Amazon, efficient household cook stoves in Kenya, renewable energy and solar power in India, and in Indonesia, geothermal power. All of these projects help us to be able to contribute to 14 of the 17 UN Sustainable Goals. So what are we doing in our business in Ireland and the UK? We're involved in a number of projects where we are improving communities. This could be, for example, sponsorship. And we do a number of different charity walks and sponsorship across both countries. We also had an event in 2019 where we planted mature trees in a hospital in Dublin. This year, our staff in our head office will be giving half a day each to volunteer to work in the hospital grounds, helping our planet. We're doing this by reducing CO2 emissions from our vehicles in the UK and Ireland, as well as offsetting 100% of the CO2 through projects worldwide. Involvement of our people. As I've mentioned, we have volunteer days, which we will be setting up in all of our major offices across the two countries. Sponsorship. We would want ideas from you about charities which we can sponsor in local areas. For example, we have a project underway in London where we work closely with a disabled organisation where people with disabilities come into the work environment and we buddy them for a year. The benefits to our staff as well as to the person with the disabilities has been enormous. So, just to reiterate, it's about improving our communities, it's about helping our planet, and it's about involving our people.